Ngozi Fulani has today announced that she will be stepping down as CEO from her domestic violence organisation, Sister Space. Ms Fulani, who was at the centre of what was known as the Royal Race Row, has claimed Buckingham Palace did not tackle the abuse she faced after an encounter with the very distinguished Lady-in-Waiting to the Queen, Lady Susan Hussey. Listen to some of her comments this morning.
I don't see what is so hard to say, I'm sorry. You sent me an invitation, so you know how to find me, you know how to say sorry. If you're sorry, then say sorry. If you're not, I get it.
I'm joined now by the royal commentator, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, thank you so much for joining me this evening. What are your thoughts about this? Is she just dragging up an old story? She's also stood down as the CEO of her charity. Do we know why? Because there have been lots of stories about that charity in the papers.
That's right. Well, when I first heard about this, a line from Hosea sprang to mind, "For they sow the wind and they shall reap the whirlwind." I mean, if her reason for stepping down is true, and we don't actually have to take that at face value, then it's obviously terrible. No one should face abuse online or in any capacity. But unfortunately, you know, this is entirely a situation of her own making, I would say. She should have known that there would be consequences from, you know, unjustly besmirching the reputation of Lady Hussey, a harmless 83-year-old courtier who was engaged in small talk. It's not Buckingham Palace's role to deal with alleged abuse. There's actually no reason at all the palace needs to have any further dealings with this lady. I mean, to my mind, the palace indulged her for far too long. You know, Lady Hussey served her late Majesty for 60 years loyally, and she's already offered an apology where she said that she gave her profuse apologies, or profound apologies, I think it was, for the hurt caused, even though many of us didn't think she actually needed to apologise. You know, the palace has bent over backwards to be as accommodating as possible, including arranging a private meeting with Lady Hussey. And they've also actually enhanced their own staff's diversity and inclusivity programs. So they've done more than enough. I mean, far from the palace apologising, I think most level-headed people would think that it's Fulani who should be apologising, apologising for traducing
Well, it always seemed to me a bit of a
reputation of a noble lady who hasn't got a racist bone in her body.
Who'd done 60 years of service.
By social media. Sorry, I can't.
But it seemed a bit of a setup, really, didn't it? Because very few people remember the details of conversation in that verbatim fashion. That was very surprising how the story came out, at least to my mind.
That's right. And quite frankly, you know, as a lady-in-waiting, the role of Lady Hussey, as you well know, is to find out interesting facts about people so that she can introduce those people to a member of the royal family should they arrive. And quite frankly, if you arrive at a royal event dressed up like an extra from The Lion King, it's unsurprising that someone would be curious as to where you're from, because she wasn't wearing a national costume, which is one of the dress codes you're allowed to wear. She was wearing a self-created costume. If she had come under her real name of Marlene Headley, and she had come wearing a smart two-piece suit from Marks and Spencer, none of this would have been an issue. She chose to make her identity an issue. And it's very interesting in an era when we're constantly discussing people's race and multiculturalism, that when someone actually does genuinely take an interest in someone's identity, someone who is very famous for portraying, for being proud of her identity, then suddenly she doesn't want to speak about it.
Thank you, Rafe. That's extremely helpful and informative for us. But back with me on my panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the Labour MP, Lloyd Russell-Moyle. Kelvin, do you have strong views on this? Do you know anything about Ms Fulani?
First of all, I feel very sorry about Lady Hussey. At 83 years old, to be thrown into a massive thing like this, having to literally be pushed out the door. I do basically tip my hat slightly to the royal family, because they've actually reopened the door for her, and I think she turned up acting for Princess Anne at Memorial of a Friend the other week. Look, this lady has caused a lot of trouble. She's also caused a lot of trouble to herself, of course, because the spotlight has fallen on the way her charity has been run. The Charity Commission have become involved, as you would expect, with a high-profile row like this, and they've discovered aspects to the way the charity is run which aren't in line with the rules and regulations. So it's no wonder she's standing aside. Look, she may be standing aside. I hope she hasn't received abuse, but she may be standing aside for that reason, although she's got to run her charity correctly, and because people have very strong views about when they supply money to people. But so I don't feel sorry for her at all. I feel sorry for Lady Hussey, who's being allowed back slightly into the royal fold. And it just goes to show you have to be very careful. I agree with that point you made about her detailed memory of what the words were. If she felt upset, right, you would have thought she would have spent a few days going around seeing people, talking about what was the best way forward, and that she basically came straight out with it and said X, Y and Z. Now, I take it at 83, her response to that was that at 83 you can be a racist. I thought that was taking the game way beyond what anything some old dear has said to you.
I think Lady Susan is definitely not some old dear. She was a very distinguished servant of the Queen, but she's definitely not a racist.
I'm not trying to put her down. I'm trying to say, in your 80s, right, the idea that you suddenly, when you get to your 80s, you are suddenly a racist is really way over the top. She was given not a break at all.
Well, there's no way she would have served the Queen for so long if she had been, because the Queen was one of the most open people you could possibly find. But Lloyd, what was your view on this? How are you concerned about the abuse allegations? Do you think that's why she stood down, or as Kelvin says, it may be the investigation into the charity behind it as well?
I mean, I think it's quite right that Lady Hussey apologised at the time, and I think that Lady Hussey did overstep the mark. Do I think she's racist? I think that's not for me to make judgment. The only person who can say that is the individual, isn't it? To say someone is a racist is to say at their core is racism. I don't believe that necessarily to be the case, but I can't say. But clearly what she said was clumsy and stupid in that context. And she recognises that. And so let's take what she recognises and has accepted. And maybe there is an argument that that's why we have retirement ages, because there comes times where people can dignifiedly retire and say, OK, this is my time out and I don't need to engage in all this public backwards and forwards. Whether now Ngozi has received hate and abuse, I'm sure she has. The online sphere will pick up anything and send garbage, and I get it, and I'm sure you get it all the time.
By the way, can I assure you, I get buckets of it. I know that will come as a surprise to you.
There's a very simple way of dealing with this, just don't read it. I mean, I don't know why people dwell on what is written about them in the Twitter sphere, which is... I tell you what,
it makes me, actually, when the hate comes in, it makes me laugh.
Entertains you.
It makes me laugh, as I think these people are sitting there going like that.
But I think some people, particularly if you're not used to it, politicians and newspaper editors, we're more used to it, and we've chosen to enter that sphere. And I can imagine that really hurt her, and that was very difficult. Now, she's only said she's stepping down temporarily, so I interpret this as she needs a break for whatever reason, a break because there's an investigation happening, a break because she's received some abuse and she needs to recover from that. And these things are difficult. And we need to change the way that we do culture of talk about people online and possibly in person, but I think online tends to end up being worse. Do I think that the palace should have supported her more? I don't see particularly what the palace could have done more. I thought the statement was very fair from the palace. Yes. They apologised. They agreed a joint statement with her at the time. They agreed to do some actions that she asked for them at the time. They fulfilled everything that they've asked. So should have the palace waded in to online comments? No, I suspect that would have actually made it worse for her. I do think that there is a wider culture of online hate and abuse that we probably should be looking at and trying to reduce, but that's not the palace's fault.
But the thing that started it all, to go back to what I was asking Kelvin, is this memory of a verbatim conversation. I don't know about you, but without watching this over again, I wouldn't be able to note down a verbatim transcript of what we have just said, even though I've been hanging on your every word.
No, but when that was written out, no one, including Lord Hussey, challenged that was the discourse that had happened. So I don't doubt that was it. And some people do have the kind of mindset when something is said to them that they don't like, they go away and squirrel it down and think, I'll write this down, I need to say this for later. And particularly if you're that kind of minded person. I'm not, because I say something, get over it, done with, have a cup of tea, and then I'm on to the next thing. And I think that's what most people are, but I do recognise that some people are not like that, and some people will squirrel things down and save them for later. And I've been caught back by that, where people have said, you said X, Y and Z 2 years ago, and I think, well, how on earth do you know?
I'll just tell you this briefly. I went to Rupert Murdoch's daughter's wedding in Los Angeles, right? She was marrying a Ghanaian. On my table, there was a African guy there. We started chatting. I said, I'm the editor of The Sun. He said, I love the paper. I see it every day. I said, well, that is a miracle. I said, I can hardly get it down the road. The idea of it going to Accra is absolutely incredible. He turned around and he said, I'm not from Accra, I'm from Hendon, right? And by the way, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know? And so even this is like 25 years ago, you can drop a clanger, right? And so I feel desperately sorry for Lady Hussey, and I don't really feel sorry for that lady at all. She knew what she was doing. She was seeking publicity for herself and her charity, and it's blown up on her. Well, so I don't feel sorry for her.
You've heard it here first. This is breaking news. Even Kelvin Mackenzie, Mr. Tact himself, can drop a clanger. But thank you to both my panellists for that, and I hope we'll see them next week.